Hi everyone. So today we're going to be focusing on the skill. I can multiply decimals to the tenths and hundredths places using the area model. So one of the things that I'm going to pull out of this skill is that we've got tenths and hundredths. So we're thinking about fractions. And then we're also going to be using the area model today. So when I'm using the area model, I'm going to be thinking about how would I write different numbers. So I have 3 and 85 hundredths times 6. So the first thing that I can do is I can break apart 3 and 85 hundredths and write that in unit form. So that can be changed to 385 hundredths. And I'm going to be multiplying that times 6. So the first thing that I like to do is the second number I'm going to put over on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to have enough places to be able to write 385 hundredths. So when I'm drawing the area model, I want to make sure that each box represents approximately the size of the piece that it's going to show. So I'm going to show 385 as 300 plus 80 plus 5. And then I'm going to make sure that I write the word hundredths so I remember what place value we are in. Okay, and then these boxes are going to be drawn to make sure that I am representing the size of the piece that correlates with the multiplication. So I know here that my number that is 300 should be a much larger answer in this box than my partial product for this box. So that's a good way of checking to make sure that my answer is making sense. So when we're multiplying our numbers, we can do some simple mental math by pulling out some numbers and using zeros as placeholders. So in this case, I'm going to really focus on the 3 here and the 8 here, and I'm going to recognize the zeros as placeholders. So 6, and if you'd like to put a little multiplication sign so that you remember that that's what you're doing between these two sides, that's a great way of remembering the steps. So 6 times 3 is 18, and then I have 2 placeholders here. So I'm going to make sure that those go in my answer. And then I have 6 times 8 is 48, and I have 1 placeholder here. So just doing a quick check, 1,800 is much larger than 480, so right now my answers are checking out. Then 6 times 5 is 30, which is significantly smaller than the other two. So my basic check works out for this. So then my next step is I'm going to add across. So I like to go by the place values. So I have in this place, I have 0, 0, and 0. So when I add up zeros, it adds up to 0. If you like to do this as a list instead, that is totally fine. So now I'm looking at the tenths place. Tenths. So I see that I have 3 plus 8, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's no hundredths place here, so now I can move on to the next. So 4 plus 8 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, but I have to remember that right now, this is representing my number in unit form, so I have 2,310 hundredths. And to write our answer in standard form, I have to change it from hundredths to the standard, so I'm going to divide by 100. So that's what I'm going to be thinking about. So I know that when I'm multiplying or dividing by 100, it means that I have to have 2 place value shifts. So I like to imagine that if I have my decimal point is after the last number, and then I'm going to shift 2 places, and I know that my digits have to shift to the right if we are dividing. So if I shifted 1 place value, the digits would end up like that. And if I shift 2 place values, they'll end up like that. So I need to put the decimal point in between the 3 and the 1. So 2,310 hundredths is the same as 23 and 10 hundredths. So I'm going to rewrite my answer up at the top. So right now would be a great time to take out your packet, multiplying and dividing decimals, and you can focus on page 1 in your packet. So I would pause the video and focus on page 1 right now. So it goes from A to J, and there are 2 word problems. So I would suggest choosing 5 different problems, making sure that one of them is a word problem, and working your way through just this skill. And then you can start the video again, and we'll go with a different page for a little bit more practice. So the next type that we're going to be doing is multiplying. Instead of a decimal times a whole number, we're going to be multiplying a decimal times a decimal using the area model. So what I'd like you to do for this part, we're going to practice with the math sentence 12 and 4/10 times 32 hundredths. So just like I did before, I'm going to rewrite my numbers in unit form, because that's really going to help me remember what numbers I'm going to be multiplying together. So in this case, 12 and 4/10 is going to become 124 tenths. And this number is going to become 32 hundredths. So I'm going to multiply these 2 numbers together, and I'm going to make sure that I remember to write down the place values that I'm working with. So on the top, I'm going to show 124 tenths. So I'm going to show 100 plus 20 plus 4 tenths. And then along the side, I'm going to show 32 hundredths. So we're going to show 30 plus 2 . And I want to remember to include these 2 pieces, because those are going to be very important in just a little bit. So I'm going to draw my boxes. And I like to utilize the lines just so that it makes it easier for me to visualize. All right, so I know that 100 has to be quite a bit bigger than 20. And I know that 20 has to be quite a bit bigger than 4. And then I know that 30 has to be a lot larger than 2. So this partial product should be the largest, and this should be the smallest, just by looking at our work visually. So just like before, we're going to pull out our whole numbers. So now when I'm multiplying, I can use that to help me. So 3 times 1 is 3, and then I see 1, 2, 3 placeholders are needed. Over here, we have 3 times 2 is 6, and then I have 2 placeholders in this case. And then 3 times 4 is 12, and I have 1 placeholder. So this all checks out so far, because we can see that this number is much greater than this number. And then we're going to multiply across for our bottom row. So now we have 2 times 1 is 2, and we have 2 placeholders. Then we have 2 times 2 is 4 with 1 placeholder. And then 2 times 4 is 8. And no placeholders in that case. So we're going to add up across. So you could either underline or you could cross out as you go. So if I go with my ones, my ones places, there's nothing there, there, or there. So when I add up, then I have 2, 0, and 0 is 2. And I can cross those out. And then I'm going to my hundreds place. So I have 1, 6, and 0. So that'll be a 7. And then I don't have any thousands place in either of those. So 3 is by itself. So when I add up those partial products, I get 3,720. And now our ones place down here, we have 8, 0, 0. It's going to be 8. Then we have 4 and 0 in the tens place. It's 4. And then 2 in the hundreds place. Okay, so we're going to add those up to find out what our partial products are, or what our unit form answer will be. So 0 plus 8 is 8. 2 plus 4 is 6. 7 plus 2 is 9. And 3 plus 0 is 3. And then I have to remember I've got my 2 place values here. So I can imagine that as tenths and 100ths. And this symbol tells me that I'm going to multiply those two together. So if I'm multiplying my fractions, I have 1 times 1 is 1, and then 100 times 10 is going to be 1,000. So that means that this unit form is in thousandths. And hopefully you would leave a little bit extra room than I did. So that means that when I'm trying to change my number from unit form to standard form, I'm going to be thinking in my head, divide by 1,000. So that means that I have to have 3 place value shifts, and I know that my number should be getting smaller because I'm dividing. So I'm going to shift the place values 1, 2, 3 place values. So my answer should be 3 and 968 thousandths when I answer that. So I'm going to write that up here. 3 and 968 thousandths. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is you're going to take out the same packet, and this time you're going to complete answers on page 4 in your packet, so it should look like this. And you're going to practice 5 more problems, one of which should be the word problem at the bottom. So choose 4 other problems and try and get a mix of multiplying tenths times tenths, multiplying tenths times hundredths. So or tenths times 100ths, or hundredths times tenths. So try and mix up the ones that you're choosing so that you get a little bit of practice of everything. So by the end of today, what I'd like you to do is you should be working on page 1 and page 4. So you're going to choose 5, making sure that you're choosing some word problems, and choose 5. And making sure that you're choosing a word problem on that page. Have a great day.